In this lecture, we are going to use general strain theory and Merton's anomie theory to analyze Michael Patrick MacDonald's memoir of life in South Boston, or Southie, during the 1970s and 80s. It is important that you watch the video titled "The Effect Whitey Bulger's Drug Dealing Had on South Boston." This video will give you an idea of the degree to which Southie was abandoned by the municipal, state, and federal governments. And Whitey's word was law within Southie. And as we read the chapters from All Souls, we're going to see how his control was inscribed in the neighborhood. At the time that Michael Patrick MacDonald is writing about, Southie was a working class neighborhood in Boston. Southie is still there in Boston, but it has been pretty gentrified. Southie was home to a large number of housing projects, largely inhabited by people of Irish ancestry. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background on the history of the Irish community. The Irish originally came over as what we would today call refugees. They were fleeing the Irish potato famine in the mid-1840s. And they were also fleeing a great deal of political violence. Now, there was another wave of Irish immigration that started to occur in the early 1900s. In the early 1900s, the Irish came to the United States fleeing military conflicts and economic trouble in Ireland. And then in the 1970s and 80s, they came to get away from what were called the Troubles. Right? And so the Troubles occurred in Northern Ireland, right, with the IRA, right, the Irish Republican Army, which was fighting with the British and also the Protestant paramilitaries. And this was an extremely violent time. There were some significant crackdowns from the British military, and the conflict between the IRA and the Scottish paramilitaries was extremely violent, right? So people came as a way of fleeing that. I do want to warn you, as you are reading these chapters, you're going to see many examples of racism. Race presents in Southie at this time as a way of drawing boundaries between people in the neighborhood. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background so that you can understand some of this. The Irish, when they first came to the United States in the 1840s, were not considered to be white. They became white over time, and part of this process of becoming white involved finding a place in the racial hierarchies here in the U.S. And this involved distancing themselves from African Americans through the use of boundary making and learning the current forms of racism at the time. By the late 1800s, the Irish had developed political power, but the Irish community was very divided by class. So we had the lace curtain Irish, who were wealthy and middle class, versus the poor and working class Irish. And in Boston, the working class and poor Irish were often competing with the members of the African American community for jobs and places to live. The racial boundary was very important to working class and poor Irish. They were seen as problematic, right? What we might call not quite white, but they wanted to lay claim to being white. So maintaining that boundary between white and black was extremely important to that. For example, you're going to read, right, how everybody in Southie pretty much was on food stamps, but food stamps were seen as shameful and they were coded as a black thing. What this means is that kids were sneaking to the grocery store to buy food with the food stamps. So everybody's getting food stamps, but that's not really what white people do, so we're going to pretend that we're not on food stamps. A look at Whitey. Hopefully you've watched the video. Whitey Bulger was a crime boss within the Irish Mafia in Boston. He also worked as an FBI informant, and he used the FBI to help him consolidate his control over Southie. Whitey was incredibly violent, and he basically, what Whitey said went. He was able to control pretty much everything that went on in Southie, and everyone knew not to say anything about what was going on. So basically, snitches get stitches, or for Whitey, stitches get dead. Whitey is an extremely important part of Michael Patrick MacDonald's story. You're going to see that two of his brothers become entangled with Whitey, and they lose their lives as a result. These photos are of Michael Patrick MacDonald and his family. So the one in the top left, this is his mom. His mom played guitar and accordion. She would play in the bars sometimes. And she's really what holds this family together. Frankie is the boxer. Right? You see him in the top, in the middle photo. He's a really interesting guy, and plays a really big part in Michael's narrative. The photo on the bottom left, I believe this is a photo of Frankie, right? Frankie's a tall guy in the back. And then Michael Patrick MacDonald's other brother, Kevin, who's also really, really important in the narratives you'll be reading, right? He's over in the far left. And then Michael Patrick MacDonald is the skinny little dude in the front. And I think with the picture of the two babies in the carriage, I think the youngest one is Michael. But I just wanted you to have an idea of who these people are, right? Make them a little bit more real to you as you're reading these chapters from the memoir. I am going to ask you, as part of the journal assignment for this week, to identify some different forms of strain that Michael Patrick MacDonald and his family experienced when they came to Southie.